All right, you freedom-loving boys and girls, whoever you are, wherever you are, welcome to CLS After Dark. I'm your host, Mark, and that guy over there. Hey, see, I even did it right. No, he's over here on my monitor, but he's over there on the screen. Hey, we got Learn Me Something in the Hizzle. We're going to be covering that. We'll introduce him in a couple seconds. You know the deal. I just got a couple little bit of admin-y kind of welcome to the show. The show is going to be about it's part 2 of our disclosure or deception. And I'll get into a little intro and then we're going to hand it over to Learn Me Something. But as always, I got to start things off with a little bit of humor. Steve, thank you so much. Oh, and I better do some because that might blind people over my shoulder. So let's just do this. Yep, that's right. If you shop with Black Scout Survival, that is about 30 med kits we just finished. They're just sitting there. So a whole lot of medical deployment pouches. Well, I wonder why suddenly people start thinking about medical and ammo and training and all that kind of stuff. Kind of weird, huh? How that works. But yeah, that's the world we're living in right now. So disclosure or deception. I'm going to say no disclosure, but a whole hell of a lot of deception. And we'll get into that. But as always, so that was my one little thing. Thanks to Black Scout Survival and all his customers. And then now we got to do our hats off to Steve. So we got 2 jokes. We'll start it off with a joke and we'll end it with a joke. These are dad jokes. Maybe that's why the one person comes over to all my videos. I got one person giving me thumbs down, clearly a troll, or they don't like the dad jokes and they don't.
It just started.
I know, right? Come on, man. All right. So here we go. I just asked my son what he learned in school today. He said, apparently not enough because I have to go back tomorrow. But boom. Where's George with that drum roll? Come on. That was pretty good, boys and girls. Apparently I didn't learn enough. I got to go back tomorrow. All right, real quick. We got some shout outs. Let's just do this. And I just inadvertently, because of Learn Me Something, I just learned how I could pop all your comments up onto the stage, but I think that's too distracting. So we'll do this. We got Frank in the house. Frank, great to have you here tonight. Frank's a good guy, boys and girls. I've never had a beer with him, but I've talked to him a couple times and he's good people. Hope you guys touch on Joe Kent. Curious what your thoughts are. Not in this episode, Frank, but I'm going to modify my intro to try to use Joe Kent to talk about disclosure and deception. So give me a second. Let me stall as my brain tries to keep putting that together. We got Gene in the Hizzle with a big woo, the original. And then we got C. Saline, Minnesota in the house. Matt, AR-15. Okay, we got Nebraska in the house. There we go. Matt saying hi. Oh, what just happened? Something just bounced around. Yeah, that was weird. Okay, we left it off with Matt from Nebraska. Then we've got, yeah, there we go. Snowshoe Dave in the house, checking in from Michigan. Got a couple people shouting out back to him. We got Greg from Florida. Greg, good to see you too. And then, yeah, Matt's just saying hi to everybody. Okay, thanks, Matt. Really appreciate that. Thanks for everybody being here as always. You're taking your time away. Hopefully you have this just in the listening mode in the background. But we're going to talk about disclosure deception. So, just a few weeks ago before all this, Boomba bombing stuff started happening, another deception, another attempt to divert your attention from other issues. Well, and that's what I kind of think the disclosure commentary was just what was that, a month and a half ago now? Learn Me Something that was kind of making the news, give or take. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did a teaser.
Yeah, they did a teaser. Hey, we're going to do this. And then just like everything else, we're going to release the e-files and we're going to hold people accountable and we're going to audit the Fed and all this, all this stuff gets said and then you get your hopes up and then it gets shuffled around and until you forget about it. So back to Frank's question about Joe Kent. Full disclosure, I do not know the man. Apparently he used to work at the agency. I never met him. That doesn't mean anything. I haven't been there since 2010. 2011, whatever that was, 11 or 12, something like that. So I've been out of there for, a good decade. So that doesn't mean anything. But I will just say this. So, and this is the same for any employment, government especially, though. I think it's worse in the government. There's always something going on behind the scenes that we don't know. He's sleeping with her. She's sleeping with her. He's giving this person a raise because they're buddies. And, it really, the nepotism, the corruption, the graft. I hate to say it. Most of your government entities, organizations really don't have a moral compass or, any type of code, except the code is to get over on each other as, best as you can. So back to the Joe Kent. I don't know anything about him, but I will just say this. I mean, if you are following that story, here's a man who, with a very extensive background, multiple tours, as an 18 series special forces, then got picked up by the agency. It's saying some things. Maybe he was in the PM side of it. I don't know. I don't know what he did there. Again, I don't know the man, but then he was in a very senior position within our current administration. There's all kinds of shenanigans going on. You can say I'm just not blue team or red team. That's the same team as far as I'm concerned. My team is freedom. And I don't care if you blue jersey or red jersey. If you believe in freedom, as our friend Patrick says, then I believe in you. If you love freedom, I love you. I think that's what he says.
Yeah.
Okay. I would just take things with a little bit of a grain of salt, because what I have seen already happen is the attempt to smear him. Like, people are all saying now all these things. I don't care if he puts his left sock on before his right sock. None of that stuff matters. It seems to me that it's a whole bunch of song and dance. It's intentional disinformation. And I don't like using that term, but that term did exist. And it's because this is what it is. It's disinformation. It's deniability. It's, gaslighting. Again, we're running propaganda and psyops on our own people. And that's clearly what's going on here. It would appear to me and I don't know the whole story, so I'm making a mistake here and I'm jumping in and picking a side. But if I had to put some money down, I'd probably bet that he's probably squared away and had something to say and they didn't want to hear it, or somebody didn't want to hear it. There's lots of gatekeepers. And that will be another thing that comes up. If there is extraterrestrial life, aliens, little green men, however you want to say it, lizard people, or if it's multidimensional, transdimensional, whatever it is, there will be entities within our government and many other governments that, for their own hubris, for their own greed, for their own personal selfish reasons, they will try to confuse, muddle, and change the truth, or make the truth appear to be a falsehood appear to be a truth. They will try to hide and prevent actual disclosure from taking place. So that's my kind of prediction on that as well. Okay, I got to do that. Quest Views here. Good to have you here, Quest Views. I don't know if you saw the intro. That intro was put together by Quest Views. I don't know if I gave him the attribution. That's a real picture of a much younger, way healthier me, in one of the garden places. But I didn't get abducted by a UFO. Although that land was as crazy as it might as well been on a foreign planet, but foreign, something like that. But thanks, Quest Views. And then Gene, as a great man said, how many days? Well, yeah, that's a good question. So that was my little kind of monologue, Frank. I hope I answered your question, to some extent. And, learn me something, or if anyone else has a comment and want to chime in, I try to do the chat and we'll get to that if we can. But just like in this subject, just like with the Joe Kent subject, there's going to be deception. There's going to be subterfuge. There's going to be, hey, look over here, rope-a-dope. There's going to be all kinds of nonsense because they don't want the truth come out. Because the truth could be that they sidelined that guy because he was speaking the truth. And look at where we are right now. I'm going to end my little rant. Hey, it's gas has gone up $1, a full $1 here in about 30 days. It's been not, and we've been doing 14 or whatever many days of this quote unquote conflict. So it's going to get worse before it gets worse. All right, here we go. Let's go over to Learn Me Something. Hey, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, because I know they've seen you, but just as always, in case we got somebody new, and then you take it right from there into your monologue that you wanted to start with, sir.
Of course. Yeah. So I'm just a regular guy like the rest of you that hang out pretty much in the chat every week and watch, the CLS videos, as well as, I really enjoy the products that CLS offers. So, of course, when Mark had asked me, let's see, I think the first time that I went on, was it last year? Yeah. I jumped at the chance and I said, sure, yeah, I'd be glad to come on the program and give my 2 cents, which isn't worth much, but I figured, sure, why not? Why not get involved and help a guy that really seems to care about other people? So, that being said, I just wanted to maybe we should just get into the show at hand. So what we're looking at is a situation where, with disclosure, where nobody really knows for certain what's going on, right? We exist in a world where it feels like we're constantly being lied to, and where the public seems to have lost confidence, and we should really challenge everything because of that fact, because of the fact that we feel as though we aren't truly told anything. But the most important thing is that we use discernment when we're evaluating certain things. And we shouldn't really rely on too much on past experience and things that we've been taught in the government schools or whatever else. We should really try to use that discernment and do our own research from time to time, and not discount things just because they're different. Sometimes it's worth going through the exercise to evaluate theories. It doesn't mean that you have to take those theories upon yourself and believe them outright. But what you should do is test those things. Dig deep, see what things you can pick off, and then see what types of things might be common denominators with regard to that. So again, like I said, a lot of these things that we're going into are theoretical, and they may contain half-truths. So what we have to do is extract the actual truth from that, and I think that will help to inform every individual. And that's going to be a private journey for everyone. So that being said, I mean, let's get into this and have some fun.
Yeah, and let's have some fun. Look, some of these issues, are going to be religious in nature. And, this is an adult table conversation, and it's supposed to be fun. If somebody's going to say, oh, that's BS, and, there is no such this, and, just as a Christian, I'm going to say, so God's intent, right? You're that smart. You're that in touch with, the big guy, that exactly everything there is about everything, right? So be open-minded, just like what Anthony just said. That's what we're doing. We're having fun here. Hey, like my previous comment, be open-minded. I might be wrong. I'm admitting it. I don't know the guy, and I'm not inside of that group, or in that working group, or that kind of that intelligence IC community apparatus, that was kind of advising Trump that he was a part of. I don't know. I wasn't there. But I've been in those things. I've been in those places, and something tells me there's probably a whole lot of disinformation and deception going on, because somebody probably didn't like what he had to say, and now, but the difference there is, I don't know. Was he saying that, hey, there is only one God, or there is only this or that? I don't know what it was he was saying. But when you're talking about national security and strength capabilities or weaknesses of, your adversaries, some of those things you can be pretty damn sure of, like you're almost 100%, no, we can say with about a 90-some% accuracy that they probably have about 400 main battle tanks. And of all those main battle tanks, 100 are in this category, 200 this category, another 100 are from, the Korean War era, something like that. You can say that with a high degree of certainty. But when it comes to whether there really are little green men or lizard people or multidimensional beings or God for that matter, hey, man, I don't know. You got to just have faith and an open mind, right?
Yeah.
All right. So where do you want to run? You want to run it first, or should we just
we'll run it. So I just want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pose a couple of questions, and these questions are not only for the chat, but they're also for the comment section after the video post. And one of those questions pertains to a movie that's supposed to be released by Spielberg called Disclosure. Now, it's supposed to release, I believe, in June of 2026. So this summer. And my question that I'm posing to the chat as well as the commenters is, do you think that the government disclosure will occur before or after that release of that movie?
Well, that's a damn good question.
My next question pertains to the creator, and whether, and this is all going to be individual thought based upon everybody here. It's all opinion, right? So has the creator continued to create or ceased to create? And if the creator has consistently created this entire time, do all civilizations have to come in faith to the creator in like fashion? Meaning, do they have to all have faith in the creator and follow a certain moral code or follow certain rules? So this is all up to you guys to discuss or put your opinion.
So, hey, just
you
real
could
quickly,
either put it in the chat or in the comments,
hey,
after the fact.
So, hey, so just real quickly, and then let me just paraphrase it back to you, and then keep going. So the question is, okay, so maybe we're coming from a perspective because we believe there is a creator, God. But so I guess that's the first part of your question. If there is a creator, right? If this was created by, the ultimate, highest power, a God, the God. Your question is, did he make us and then just sat back on his hands, or is he constantly making things, has been making for this whole time? And those other things that he's created, let's assume that they are sentient life, right? Because, I don't know, maybe deer and ticks and frogs have consciousness. I don't know. But, for sentient beings, your question then is, those sentient beings, is it, kind of also not obligatory, but a part of whatever their lifestyle or something is, that where they also believe in the creator? Is that what you're kind of asking? Yeah. Or do they just not have any idea and they have a completely different?
I'm just trying to create a fun conversation about sentient beings. If other sentient beings are constantly being created within all these different galaxies and things like that, do they have to pretty much follow the same path of not only faith but fealty, and ensuring that they follow the moral code, so to speak? So that's something for the chat to come up with, or even in the comments after the video is posted, as an after action type thing. But that's just food for thought for everybody. We're not gonna just stick with that and then not proceed. We're gonna proceed on with the program, but for the most part, that's just something for people to think about and see what they're where they land on that kind of stuff.
Well, we already have comments in the chat that are kind of answering part of your question. BCP, hey, nice to see you here, BCP. The disclosure will never happen. And then Matt's agreeing with BCP. And hey, is that BCP like who it should be? The one and only BCP? Man, we haven't seen or heard from you in a long time. If that's you, sir, good to see you here. All right, I hope it's you. And and if not, glad to see you, other BCP. But and then Questviews, disclosure sounds like a bad legal television serial. It does. And it would. He's right. It would have really bad music to it. Like that court drama, chunk chunk, whatever, disclosure. So yes, we already have one or two people saying disclosure isn't going to happen. And I guess maybe just to answer your questions and I'll start it off. I don't think true disclosure will happen. I think if true disclosure ever does happen, so I guess maybe I kind of misspoke a little bit. If there ever is true disclosure, it won't come from any government, and if it does come from a government, it's going to be a rogue government that just is saying, to everybody else, GFY, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do in this. But like the censorship and, those people will be pretty ostracized, and who knows, we'll probably go to war with them next too, right? Because of, how dare you do that? But that's what I kind of think, Anthony. I don't think our government, I don't think anyone's going to be honest with it. There's just too much for the government and for wealthy and politically, for wealthy, the elite, however you want to say that. Because the political people work in your government, hey, sorry, I don't care if you're on blue team or red team. Your government doesn't give a shit about you. It doesn't. They don't care about you. And those unelected officials, they're even worse. They're even worse than what, in our elected officials. They don't care about it. They just, as long as they make their money, they don't give a crap. One of the only jobs where you get your starting salary is like 170 a year, but within 2 years or so, you're a multimillionaire. Anybody ever lived in DC? It ain't cheap. So tell me how that happens. But yeah, I kind of agree with everybody so far, Anthony. I don't think disclosure is going to happen.
Yeah, if it were to happen, it would probably be under the guise of some sort of a control thing, to where they would say, oh, the powers that these entities, they have a much more sophisticated system, and we should follow their lead, maybe their system of governance or religion or whatever else, and then usher in some sort of a global system. But other than that, I don't really think that there's going to be anything forthcoming in the near future.
Well, let's throw Blackbeard's comment in their quest views. I mean, everybody can see it, everybody's already seen it, but basically he's saying disclosure will happen and it has been happening. However, it's going to be constructed or it's going to be construed or delivered in such a way that everyone is going to embrace or accept the framework that it's being delivered, like a messiah. But his point is it's really all occult and it's evil. Yeah. So
yep.
You want
he's onto something. Yep.
Yeah, you want to just address that real quickly? Because we kind of jump past that. I'm saying disclosure isn't going to happen, but I mean true disclosure, the actual truth.
Right.
I think I agree with quest views too, but you want to address that one?
Yeah. So
Anthony, you want to address that?
What was that?
Can you address that? His comment there about, we will get
the occult. We will most certainly be getting into that aspect. So what I kind of wanted to do things in a few phases. So what I wanted to discuss was.
Well, hang on, time out. Okay, so you don't want to address that comment there. You got a place where that's going to come up again. Okay, so then let's just jump on that real quickly. Then just still on that point though, it's spelled out in Childhood's End. So anybody, I don't know that book, but might be something worth checking out. Matt saying is funny. And then BCP, I don't think anyone can comprehend what our creator has done or is capable of doing. There may be more than one universe. Well, kind of going into that, and I wanted to at least get here before we went further, Anthony, because that goes into then, is the creator constantly busy, constantly working, and what do these other, intelligent lives or species or whatever it may be, if these things exist, what is their hierarchy or their, religious or their fealty, their faith, I agree with BCP, and that's always been my thing, and the joke I even made at the beginning. So you think you can fathom the mind of God, the creator, and what everything, and the truth? I think that's impossible. So maybe that's like, oh, okay, well I just did my own, proved myself wrong. Well, if you can't fathom things, then how do I know that's impossible? I guess I'm making kind of like a mathematically safe bet. 99.99 repeating % sure that not a single person out there truly can fathom God. Maybe some people can, are spoken to or touched or, interpret things a certain way or see signs. And maybe there's some truth in that, right? Like on a spiritual level, and a dimensional level. But I agree with BCP, Anthony. And so therefore, I think it's a pretty fair assessment that, there is other life out there, because there's not just this universe, right? We've got the known universe with an almost infinite amount of galaxies inside them. Every one of those galaxies, planets, stars. I mean, we're in the billions, right? So, just mathematically speaking, something else should exist out there, something else that's sentient. If you just even take it in the planet Earth, and I'm going to mess this up a little bit. What do they say? Earth is like, 13 billion years, 15 billion years old, whatever they're estimating Earth is. But, the current Earth as we know it, habitable, we're talking, 4 billion years, and mankind has only supposedly been around for so long. Well, okay, even if we go with that, and if you go into, ancient aliens, megalithic structures, ancient civilizations that had to have had some advanced tech, and people like, well, that's not possible. These guys were all just hunter-gatherers. We've only been around. This evolution of whatever we are has only been around for a blink of an eye. We have no idea. Even if we say, Earth has been around for 4 billion years, like with life on it, right? And then humans have been around for, let's just say 1 million years. Let's say 1 million years. Well, if there's another planet and somewhere else in this universe or galaxy, or another galaxy within this universe, and if they're only ahead of us by 2 billion years, I mean, where do we, if we don't kill ourselves, where might we be in another billion years? I mean, so that's just, so I think mathematically speaking, it's kind of silly to say, nah, God only created us, you know, us little human beings, and then just said, that's it. That's the best I can do. I'm not even going to try anymore. So Anthony, I just wanted to bring that up because I do like that. And that was addressing one of your comments. Now, do you want to address that, or is that going to still be part of your larger comment?
we still have a lot to go, and I already see we're almost at the half-hour mark. So I'm gonna try to expedite some things. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss was dimensionality. And as an example, a three-dimensional world versus the two-dimensional world. So we exist, of course, in a three-dimensional world. We have certain abilities within the confines of that existence. Now, if let's say we were to interact with somebody who's in a two-dimensional world, such as a flat Stanley, right? The thing that a lot of these kids used to do years ago and bring them on field trips. Flat Stanley only can move in certain planes. Therefore, if we were to enter into Flat Stanley's two-dimensional world, Flat Stanley would be mesmerized by that, would automatically think, oh my goodness, this entity is so advanced, it must be a god. But we, in fact, know that we are not gods and that we do have limitations. But drawing a parallel in the history of man and a lot of the folklore and all of the legend that we've heard over time about beings that have interacted with different cultures, it is potentially the same type of a scenario, an entity that isn't necessarily the god, but has more functionality and can do more things than the people or the entities that they are interacting with. Therefore, the lower life form will think, oh wow, this is a god that needs to be worshipped. And by pure hubris, these entities that have entered into that limited world or more limited world will take that and be corrupted by that and allow the lower life form to then celebrate it or to worship it. Because I think that when it boils down to entities of all kinds, the vast majority are corruptible. There's only it, and this is pure opinion, pure opinion in theory, that God is incorruptible. Meanwhile, all of us created beings are corruptible and easily corruptible, and therefore we fall into these traps. So I just wanted to give an idea of what interdimensionality would be like. Now, there are a multitude of different types of beings that we know through folklore theory. In some cases, the history of man, where they talk about entities such as shapeshifters. Now, shapeshifters could be fallen entities, they could be interdimensional entities, or demons, all of which that can change their physical appearance. Now, those types of things, now that ability can also happen with, according to certain folklore, human beings that are involved in the occult, and how they are able to breach that gap and become a skinwalker or shapeshifter has to do with them, I'm sorry to say, killing a family member. And that gives them the ability to do that. So they would have to be an occultist that does something like that. And this is all based upon theory and research. Do I know for a fact that any of this stuff is valid? No. Do I necessarily believe it? I have no idea. But all I know is that with regard to that entity or that type of an entity, those are the possibilities. Now, if we were to get into the entities of cryptids are mixed DNA animals. So they could be animals that have been either violated by fallen beings or other types of interdimensional beings, potentially. In pagan mythology, that's where you get your centaurs. In, United States folklore, we talk about Bigfoot. So all of these types of creatures are mixed DNA. Now, could that also occur through scientific experiments? Yes. So those are some of the more generic types that we're talking about. Now, if we were going to talk about...
Before you go any further, just, look, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, whoever you are, if you're in the chat or if you're on demand, you're interested in these subjects. But somebody might right now be saying, well, what the hell is Anthony talking about? If you go through, even in our limited history as human beings, if you go through almost every culture as it's developing seems to have almost always the same story. So there must be some kernel of truth to what Anthony was just talking about there.
Yeah.
Whether it was advanced beings that actually were here and they were genetically messing with humanity, because in almost every culture, whether it's dragons, whether it's humans with bird heads, whether, so Anthony, I think there's, again, we don't know, but yet it's just such a weird thing that you would have all these diverse cultures growing up in different regions of the world, different mindsets, different religion, but they all seem to share so many of the same common denominators in those stories. I mean, there's got to be something more to that, Anthony, I would think.
And sometimes they have very similar legends with similar types of entities. So if we were to get into into the alien variety, so if we talk about the Greys, as a lot of people posit that Greys are either interdimensional or interstellar beings. Some people posit that they are that they're skin suits for the disembodied Nephilim. Some people also look at them as biological robots. So do we know any one of those things to be valid? No. But these are all the different types of things and that you see when you do research and you look at either ufology or you look at other schools of thought where they come up with different garden varieties of what these entities could be. But they do pop up a lot throughout human history. And they're kind of woven into the fabric, a lot of these different types of things, whether they be Greys or reptilians and things like that. But we also run into a situation also with the tall whites, or sometimes people call them the Nordics, where people aren't quite sure exactly what they are. Are they fallen angels? Are they the watchers of the Book of Enoch? Are they the pagan gods of old? Again, are they interstellar? Are they interdimensional? Are they truly benevolent? Or is that a ruse? Also, if you look at it from that perspective, if let's say humanity has been getting intel from, let's say that this is valid and they're getting intel from the tall whites. Well, are there strings attached with regard to the technology and the information that we get from these beings? Who knows? But these are things to constantly think about. And another weird thing that I found in research, a theory that was found, was that these tall whites, they in sunlight apparently have rainbow shimmering skin, and at close glance the skin is more similar to scales versus our skin, which is a little odd because it reminds me of that weird girl film series of Twilight with the shimmering skin type of thing. So yeah, it's a lot of odd things that you find when you're going through and researching these types of entities, and you don't quite know, you really don't know what the truth is, but you go down all these different rabbit holes and you find a multitude of different possibilities. so to speak. So yeah, it's just it's very odd and very interesting. But the one common denominator is that hidden there's always a presence of these hidden non-human life forms woven into the fabric of human history, whether it be through mythology, folklore, whatever. It's still part of what makes us us, right? And the entities, a lot of the time, they keep humans from having full consciousness, right? They want us unconscious of the truth. And in a lot of these mythologies and folklore, those same beings are said to be not only teachers but also manipulators. So it's a very odd balancing act that you've got regarding these different types of beings and how they interact with humans. So, for instance, if you were to look at the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Lords of Darkness arrived from space and used humanity to fulfill their own purposes. It seems like it seems as though even with that, there's this common thread that seems to occur with regard to these little spacemen that we seem to gravitate to, where we're more inclined to want to believe the spacemen thing than to believe about anything regarding angels and demons and things like that. So it's just like a weird, it's a very weird mix that we've got here.
Hang on. So right there.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question because I want you to address that a little bit more. That is so interesting. I'm glad you brought it up. So I'm willing to believe that there is life in, Zeta Reticuli, Beta, whatever, some other part of the galaxy, millions of light years away. And they have the ability to travel here, which is, again, that's almost beyond our comprehension. We sit and talk about light speed, but we don't have any idea how to even do that, or wormholes. We don't know anything. I just was watching something the other day, and they had to admit, we're really just extrapolating here. We don't know, what the God gene is or black holes. We really kind of are just taking a wild stab at it. So to that point right there, isn't it interesting that, you'd believe that, yeah, there are indeed life forms, sentient life forms on distant planets in distant, solar systems, different galaxies within our universe, or our galaxy, or even in another galaxy within our universe. But there's, of course, no God. God is, you guys are crazy. That seems a little odd. And I'm not even trying to make this a conversion, like you got to believe in God, but from a mental perspective, that's a lot of gymnastics right there. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I personally believe there is a God. And when it comes down to it, I'm not going to limit God and say, oh, and he made us and then he was done. I don't know. I'm not going to put God in a box and say, oh, you took care of us and then that was it. I don't know what's in the mind of God. I don't know if God continues to create or decided that we were it. I don't know. But I'm not going to put any sort of restraint on his ability. I mean, he created us from nothing, created the universe from nothing. So at the end of the day, I mean, if a being is able to do that, they truly are a supreme being, and there is no limit to what it is that they can do. But if I could get back into some of the entities,
well,
and
if
some of the other
two more questions two more comments came up that I think are worth taking a pause. You know how it's going to be what it's going to be. So here's a kind of a question directly, not necessarily to you, but to everybody. Also more of a statement from BCP. What do you think? And I've actually heard this too, BCP. This is relatively new. I heard this about 4 years ago for me, that aliens are actually spiritual demons and dinosaurs were actually dragons. I've only heard about this recently, but it seems possible. Do you care to address that a little bit? And then there's one more comment from Questviews I think we should address before we move on to your next section.
I tend to lean a little bit more that way. I don't know for certain, I tend to lean more in BCP's into his position and his line of thought. But yeah, I don't know for certain. I mean, none of us really do. But if I were going to lean a certain way, yes, that's kind of what my thought process is based upon what I've seen thus far. However, do I really truly know and can say definitively yes? No, I can't.
Well, you know, so I just want to add in there, you know, a great little rabbit hole to go down and start looking into the fossil record. They don't, so it's another thing where we're just extrapolating, we're making shit up, and people who are honest will admit it. So to that point, and then we just mentioned you know, throughout history from different cultures, diverse cultures, separated by oceans, land masses, you know, Dagoon, Dragon, you know, like we have these similarity in words, similarity in how it's manifested or how it's described by that culture, you know, its capabilities. So there has to be some commonality. Now, some people would argue that ancient man, you know, not as educated and enlightened as we are now, would look at something like a dinosaur or something that they couldn't understand, and they would call it this thing. But when you have such a similarity in the naming convention, that seems to beg another question. And that kind of leads into what Questview is talking about, which is demons are disembodied spirits, aliens are embodied. You know, I want to get to his other comment, but that one kind of seems to fit his comment, but the same thing. We don't know what that is, but clearly something else had to have happened, because and the names, you know, again, in this, and that's just one example of many, right? And then that, hey, how is it that all of these cultures have the same thing and they have almost the same exact name? And, you know, I'm doing a bad job. You know, I'm not a history major. This isn't my expertise. I'm just like you. I'm just, I'm really interested, and I'm not stupid. You know, I think this is good stuff. I try to, you know, consume a bunch of it whenever I can, you know, with an open mind. And, you know, some stuff is obviously BS, but I think that was a good question there, Anthony. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a very distinct possibility. I mean, you know, dragons, see, when we say dragons, see, in our current era and epic and who we are as humans, we see a Game of Thrones animal. Is that what that really was? Or was it a prehistoric, you know, Quetzalcoatl, you know, or pterodactyl, or some other, you know, some other type of, you know, dinosaur, you know? But again, that's why I mentioned the fossil record. Go back and look into that. If you want to dive in rabbit hole, just start looking.
Yeah, the only thing with the fossil record is that if we truly believe that there was a worldwide flood, that would actually mix up the fossil record considerably. So people believe that all of these striations actually mean something, when in fact that's just the water level coming down, theoretically, of course. But if there were a worldwide flood, everything would be dispersed everywhere. Yeah. So there are times where people find fossils on top of a mountain that are sea life, or they find things where animals that don't necessarily belong together were somehow cast in stone together, or a type of sea life that would decompose very quickly is somehow frozen in a fossil. How does that happen when the decomposition rate of certain types of sea life is extremely fast? So it would take a catastrophic event for it to be encapsulated. And fossils don't necessarily have to happen over thousands or millions of years. They can actually occur through catastrophic event immediately, especially if dirt and sand encapsulate an animal or fish or even vegetation. Because when you look at something, let's say like a jellyfish, how would you have a jellyfish that would be encapsulated as a fossil? Those decompose very quickly. Or you see something that it's in the act of eating something or has something in its digestive tract. All of those things, I mean, they make you question what it is that we've been told for all this time. So yeah, I mean, it's all of it's worth exploring. I'm not gonna, the point isn't to, crap all over what people think. It's just to get people thinking outside the box. And honestly, that's the most important thing that anybody could do. You could have a certain set of values or whatever else, but every once in a while you've got to test those values and those belief systems, because that's how you're going to know they're true. When you can constantly pick away at those things and test those things, that's when you're going to realize, wow, you know what, I'm onto something. Or you go, all right, maybe I was wrong about this or that, or maybe I'm completely wrong. But the whole thing is to test and to constantly test things, because the whole point is, in this walk of life, is to seek the truth. Seeking the truth is the most important thing that you could possibly do. Sitting on your butt and letting somebody else tell you what the truth is or what to believe isn't going to lead you in the right path. That's going to be somebody leading you on the path that they want you to be on. You've got to seek the truth yourself. Nobody is going to do that for you. So, with regard to that, I think it's very important that we all just every once in a while say, all right, well, this is either my political system or this is my belief system on, when it comes to faith or whatever else. Every once in a while, just test yourself and see if you're founded in something that's true. That's all I really want to say about that. But
for me, real quickly,
if you
when
would,
it comes to,
yeah,
hang on, no. So just real quickly, we just sat and took a little bit of time and talked about the fossil record, prehistory, dinosaurs. That can be a really interesting topic.
Mm-hmm.
Does that necessarily tie in with disclosure deception? Yeah, to some extent, because we don't even know the truth of how long humanity's been around. And again, it's a fun rabbit hole to go down. Be open-minded, like Anthony's saying.
Mm-hmm.
There's people, because you could go, there's so many things, crystal skulls, hieroglyphs, or why is there no hieroglyph anywhere, in Egypt talking about building the pyramids? Those guys documented everything in their crazy little drawings, but they didn't document building those pyramids, and et cetera, and mythology and ancient creatures. And how is it that men that are supposedly hunter-gatherers with bronze tools are moving blocks of stone and cutting them to such precision? We cannot do it in today's day and age. So I like that. So it was a little bit of a
or even making structures that have crazy acoustics and super detailed artwork, and you go, you did that with a chisel? Like, I'm not buying it, especially when something is so smooth and symmetrical and perfect. You go, I don't know about that. I'm not buying it.
There's just so much there, and that's what I was just trying to go. There's they seem like they might be different rabbit holes, but I think they all are.
They're all interconnected.
But I brought it up because in my opinion, it echoes what you're saying. Have an open mind, explore, question things, ask, because once you start looking at that and you're saying, there's no way what we're saying about ancient man can be true, because ancient man could not have done that. They had to. If ancient man did it, ancient man had a different type of technology than we did. Maybe they better understood sound or gravitics or water. They did something. If they did it, they had a skill that's been lost to time, because we can't do that. So it just gets you questioning. So if that's true, then what about this? And what about that? And then, hey, let's bring this back over to this, because I hope this ties in. And, it just is what it is. We're at 50 minutes. So it's, these things go so fast, boys and girls, Anyway, but Questview had a couple points here.
Mm-hmm.
Angels are extraterrestrials. If you remember where we were in the conversation, we were kind of right. This is right before we talked about dragons being, like that whole part of the conversations. And then demons are disembodied spirits. Aliens are embodied spirits. And that's we already kind of brought that up, but that's a good one. And then here, astral catastrophicism. So astral catastrophism. See Immanuel Velikovsky. I don't know Immanuel Velikovsky, but so that also, like transpermia, or panspermia, excuse me, panspermia. Like, I don't know if that's the same thing, Questviews, if you can add to that, at these astral, from space catastrophes, cleansing mechanism. So even that, I think, Anthony, if you want to address quest views or what I'm going to say, because if God exists, and I believe there is a God, then everything that transpires throughout our solar system, our galaxy, the universe, this is all part of a larger plan, movement, and God, the supreme being, right, the supreme architect, however you want to go about saying it, would have it where, rocks float through these expanses, of where there's nothingness, and then they come into systems, and then these rocks get sucked in through gravitational pull forces, collide into a planet, maybe either cause a catastrophe or bring other particles from other parts of the galaxy or that solar system or the universe. And then as a result of that, that coupled with the disaster, fire, or the cleansing, or however it is, kind of creates a new dish and life is born. Well, I mean, that just seems like, well, yeah, that's not random. That's exactly what I would think, God would be capable of doing. And that's how you would do it. Because then, kind of to your point, he could take a break. He's like, hey, I got all this set up, shit's moving around. I can take a day off now because things are just kind of doing its own, their own thing. So I don't know if that ties in with quest views, but if you want to address that, Anthony.
Yeah, it could be anything. But the thing is that when it boils down to it, aliens, angels are alien to our world. God technically is alien to what we understand. So a lot of the heavenly bodies, a lot of those heavenly beings are alien to our existence. They are otherworldly. They are different. They are much more advanced than we. So when we look at it from that perspective, anything technically is alien.
Anunnaki.
And
yeah, again, just different. Yeah.
So we don't know what any of those things are. We put labels on them, but we don't know what they are.
Small little joke. It's not me. It's this light. Because look at my hands even. Like I just realized, holy crap, look how red my face is. No, it's the light, So it's this lighting is making, see, look at how my hand can get even more red. Yeah. Sorry, I just noticed that. But Anunnaki, baby. All right, keep going.
Yeah. So actually I did want to get into some more of the different beings, because we never really quite got into reptilian beings. However, there are a few different cultures that bring those types of beings into play.
Okay, how about this? Take 10 minutes on that, and then we'll wrap it up, because quest views, there's 2 points that he's made. I think we could then take 10 minutes to talk about lizard people. Gene, that one was for you. And
it's definitely for Gene.
and then we'll come over, we'll do quest views, and then we'll that should be about our Minnesota goodbye, wrapping that point then.
Okay. All right. So with the Hindu Aryans,
that's a real thing, by the way,
the
folks.
Nagas, which are serpent.
Hang on. He can't hear me. His audio is really bad. I hope my audio is better this time around. But what he just said, that's a real thing. Hindu Aryans. That is what he said. That's not made up. That's a real thing. Go check it out.
Yeah. So they speak of the Naga, which are serpent people. Now the Nagas ate human beings. The Nagas also had an affinity for water. So when in our current day, when we're talking about seeing UAPs or UFOs and them being around bodies of water or coming out of bodies of water, I mean, that's a connection. Those same Nagas taught humans knowledge and advanced technologies. So there was a give and take. So in that scenario, yes, they were teaching them things, but at the same time, they were both subjugating them and consuming them. So in that lore, they also talk about a paradise land in the inner earth. That paradise land was the world of Agartha, with a capital city of Shangri-La or Shambhala. And the king of that realm was said to bring about the New World Order. Really weird stuff, right? So now this whole thought process of having an inner world is in a few different cultures, because the Chinese, the Inuit, the Pueblo Indians, and the Egyptians also talk about the North Pole having some sort of an entrance to a hollow earth. So that's that whole hollow earth theory, which also kind of coincides biblically as well, because in the parable of the rich man and the beggar, you have Sheol being in the center of the earth. And Sheol is broken up into two parts, a paradise side and a torment side. And you can find that in Matthew 16, 19 through 31. Now, there's also talk about the Messiah going to Sheol. So in Psalm 16, 10, if you look at that, you'll see a discussion about what will happen regarding the Holy One. Then in Matthew 12:40, Jesus talks about how he would be down there. He would be in the belly of the earth for 3 days, just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale. In Acts 2:27, it also refers to that same hollow earth in a slightly different light. Ephesians 4:8 through 10 also discusses that center of the earth situation. 1 Peter 3:18 through 19, as well as Revelation 1:18 alludes to that fact. It doesn't go as much into detail as the others, but it also alludes to that fact. There are additional inner earth references in Philippians 2:8 through 11, where it talks about how every knee will bow, things in heaven, things in the earth and under the earth. Revelation 5:12 through 13 does the same thing. And then there's even reference in Job, in the book of Job, where Satan himself talks about how he went to and fro in the earth and from walking up and down in it. That's Job 1:6 through 7. So if you were to look through, research that kind of stuff on your own time, but you'll see that there's a lot of discussion even in the Bible with an inner earth type of realm. Now, going back to even more of the lizard people situation, the plumed serpent god Quetzalcoatl of Central America was the bringer of civilization, which a lot of other occult...
Specifically, that's Aztec, because, okay. Yep.
And then in the Sumerian cultures, they talk about the god of this world being named Anki. If you look at that God of this world title, and you look in 2 Corinthians 4:4, you'll see who the God of this world is, laid out. And it has a very similar type of profile as the plumed serpent. And then also in Sumerian culture, when they talk about the Apkallu, they talk about the Watchers, which also makes you think about the Watchers that are referred to in Enoch, which were those fallen angels were referred to as the Watchers. Also in biblical texts, they speak of the seraphim, which are the six-winged angelic beings, sometimes interpreted as being fiery or poisonous serpents as well. So you can find those references in 1 Enoch. You can also find that in Isaiah 6 and Ezekiel 1. And the angelic hosts of that type, their hybrid offspring would be, and of course it's all theoretical, right? This is what we're discussing. That they would be giant offspring, and because they're of seraphim lineage, they could have serpentine characteristics as well. So those are some just little things that you pick up here and there as you go through researching all these different things. Am I saying that any one of those things are an absolute? Not necessarily, with regard to, the seraphim and how their offspring would look, but it's a lot of interesting little tidbits of information that kind of link together across cultures. So
Yes.
I just found that fascinating.
And
Nephilim, yeah,
and
yep.
I just want to echo. So, again, if you want, and if you're serious or if you're interested, what does your research mean? Well, hopefully it's more than just watching, the History Channel and
Mhm.
watching Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's more of like reading and like, so look, I really want to read the Book of Enoch, right? And that's already been brought up in the conversation a couple times. It's been brought up in the chat. And, and so just the existence of this, and it's actually 5 books. It's Enoch and then 4 others, I think, these other books that are outside of the gospel. And then you can even just, begs the question of which Bible are you reading? And there's all these issues. But to Anthony's point, maybe you don't know the scripture specifically, but it's found there. It is discussed there, right? Everybody, so that just is another one of these things like, oh, what doesn't exist? I'm like, but you're a Christian. You believe in God, right? And you're like, yeah. So you don't believe in the Bible then? And then you'll get people say, well, the Bible is a matter of, well, hang on a second, again, and that's what everybody said about the city of Troy from, Homer, the Iliad. Oh, Troy doesn't exist. That's something, that Homer made up. Now, Troy was discovered in 19, whatever it was, 30 something, the guy actually read the book, went over to Turkey, kind of asked around, and boom, here's Troy. And so many other quote unquote, oh, that's just, folklore, that's not real. And then we finally eventually discover it. So again, the scripture part matters because here's another, if you call it a document, right? Here's another document from ancient time that correlates, Anthony, I think to your point, to other scriptures, other writings from, so many other cultures, Hindu. I mean, we could sit and talk about that. I can't remember what that's called, the Pavarat, but yeah, whatever that book is, right? In Hindu, in history, I guess, if you want to say, or cultural tradition. And, they talk about so much of the stuff and there's such a great correlation. I mean, come on, man. I mean, just quite simply. So, somebody's like, that's not what God would do, or not, now you're getting too religious. Well, I mean, we're talking about disclosure or deception. I mean, if we want to be honest about disclosure, shouldn't the first part just being like, hey, man, maybe there might be something to this, because there's a ton of supporting documents. There's a ton of, hieroglyphs, cave art, megalithic structures. There's just so much evidence that's right there. I think the moment you actually have an open mind and look at it, you have to find yourself saying, man, now I better read the Book of Enoch. I better study a little bit. This is some crazy, and what a great movie, honestly. But Hollywood would never make it because, they'd make Satan the king or something like that anyway. But, freaking Hollywood. Hey, we're at an hour. We've had a couple comments. So let me go into just because I want to come back to something that Questfuse was saying, and then that'll be kind of our wrapping up. So I'm jumping ahead on the comments just real quickly. Gene is saying, awesome episode, needs to be more than one listen, to listen to it more than once. Questfuse is saying you were knocking them out of the park. You were hitting homers and triples with those verses. You were very much on point.
I appreciate it from Steven. Steven's a very intelligent man.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I respect the hell out of him.
And he knows that. Yeah, he that is definitely. And then, so I kind of wanted to do this because this ties into disclosure, deception. What's the truth? Like NASA, I guess you could throw this in there. So before I pull up his comment, do you trust anything in your government? NASA's been busted lying so many times. How do you even really know what's true or not? What is really, is there a secret space fleet? And then we're all just doing rocket, basic combustion engine rocket propulsion, but we've already moved on past that. Why is NASA, like the face on Mars, and how they totally, blew that off and they wouldn't confirm it. And then they did, and they've been busted shopping their pictures, and oh, there's a picture and somebody sees it, and then suddenly the picture disappears. So this goes to this question right here. Learn me something as we're kind of wrapping it up on the disclosure deception. His question is, where'd the asteroid belt come from? And for those who might not be familiar, there are some people who speculate, and they and if you kind of look at it, on the surface, and I only know surface level about what he's talking about, but the asteroid belt is where there should have been another planet. And when we talk about how long civilization, us as humans, how long we've been around, what if there's been things that have been, a couple billion years longer than us? And then so it's part of the speculation. Anthony, do you know this story?
No, not really. No.
So the speculation is the asteroid belt, and Questviews chime in here as well, pop in a comment. But that was another planet. And so when we get into gods, and the Anunnaki and the fall, and all of the Nephilim, when we get into all this stuff, part of this is like, yeah, well, because there used to be life throughout our solar system, because again, we can only think in terms of like, a couple 100,000 years, if that. Okay, but Earth in this state has been around for 4 billion, and it's been around as a planet or a clump of rocks or whatever, as best as we can guess, for 12, 13, 15 billion. Well, what was going on in those billions of years? What if other planets matured, stabilized, and allowed for environments and animal life, and then and that takes its course. Panspermia takes place, and now there's a new meteor, and that gives the right chemical, and some life form exists. Well, the argument here is that life did used to exist, and that's why Mars doesn't have an atmosphere. That's why NASA is hiding things on Mars. So Anthony, the argument would be, and Blackbeard can school me if I get this too wrong, but there was a war. That asteroid belt is exactly where there should have been another planet. That planet must have been destroyed, and that's why we have that asteroid belt, still maintaining its location within our solar system due to gravity, So that was a civilization, an interstellar war, within our solar system, and that was destroyed. But I think that also then begs the question of like, so, fallen angels, the gods, whatever, however you want to say this, so I don't know if anyone can tell when that took place, if there was another planet there, and if it was destroyed, when did it happen? I don't think we have any clue. And if we do, they're not sharing it. But to that final point, though, is if that wasn't, if that was only like, 100,000, 200,000 years ago, maybe a lot of these folklore and this history that we see from ancient man's, human civilization may have had actually something to do with that. I mean, it could have just been visitations from fellow creatures who resided in our solar system until they killed themselves.
Yeah. Or it could be similar to what is a similar event to what occurs at the end of Revelation, where God destroyed the planet. So we have no idea. I mean, we come up with tons of theories. We don't, at the end of the day, we have no way of knowing. We could do as much forensics as we want, but are we really going to be able to arrive at a conclusive answer? Not necessarily. So when it comes to that, the asteroid belt could have been that. Could have been, two warring factions, two warring worlds, or it could have been a scenario whereby there was a civilization that lived there that was not faithful to God, and God zapped it. Who knows?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we have no idea. And that's what's the fun part of the entire thing. It's trying to seek out the truth and try all these different angles and see, what makes the most sense. So I don't know. To me, I just found this deep dive kind of fascinating, going into all these different things and different folklore and different cultures and how they went about seeing things. And there was a very stark, there was a major similarity, especially with the Anasazi disappearance and the Apache, about how they both talk about reptilians that come in, teach them witchcraft, witchcraft opens portals, and then what occurs is giants come in and again cannibalize the people. It seems like an ongoing theme that whenever portals are opened through witchcraft, there seems to be these entities that come in that destroy man. or that attack man or that consume man. And the sheer fact that it occurs throughout so many different cultures gives me pause that if there were truly these entities that show up one day, that they would actually be benevolent beings. I would tend to think that, you know what, based upon a lot of the evidence, or at least the theory or the folklore, it doesn't seem to work out well. You know, these beings don't come here and just go, oh yeah, here's all this free tech, and we're going to teach you all this stuff, and there aren't strings attached. It seems like there are strings attached throughout all of these little stories. So I don't know. It's still a really interesting subject, and there's so much more to delve into, but we're already past an hour, almost at an hour and 15 minutes. So I don't even know that we'll be able to touch upon the rest of what I wanted to get into and how it connected with a few other aspects in current events and the occult. So
well, okay. I know you are having a hard time hearing me, but here's what I'm going to propose. Let's wrap it up. Let's have you on next week. Let's do part 3. Let's wrap this up, because I know, boys and girls, Anthony has done, he's into this. This is an interesting subject for him already, but he really has kind of put some effort into being able to talk about some of this stuff. Look, honestly, more than I am. I'm just talking about the things that I just know and I can remember at that surface level. So I would propose, Anthony, if you're okay with it, let's bring you on again next week. Let's finish up this subject, because the week after that is going to be Chappie is coming back, and that's going to be the last of the CLS After Dark episodes for this season. Because it's, next week or this week, and whatever it is, the 22nd, or I think it's the 22nd, that's spring solstice. So, everybody's going to be starting to move into doing a million other things. So let's do, if you're okay with it, and we can talk offline, but I guess I'm saying that more for the audience. But I also wanted to leave everybody with this thought based on what Anthony was just talking about. CERN, Charlie, Echo, Romeo, November. Hopefully we'll bring this up a little bit.
Yeah, we will.
Because disclosure or deception, who's really running things in the world? Who's really in charge of the United States of America? You take that, extrapolate, what you're thinking, who's really in power, Rothschilds, this, that, And then you go and you look at CERN, and like, who knows how much money. Maybe that's where, that's why Doge got shut down, because they would have found out we're funneling trillions of dollars every year into CERN research, because these people want to open up a gateway. And here it is, Gene, witchcraft, spacecraft, or Stargate. Yeah, exactly. That's it. We may not want to be doing this shit. And this is not a public discussion, like no one's like, hey, are we really sure about this? Why are we doing that? Oh, well, science, it's crazy. We just got to do it and see what happens. Not if it kills everybody, or demons and dragons. Suddenly we find out dragons are real because they're all over the place eating up airplanes and shit, no bueno, no me gusta. All right. Gene just said a part 2. But I want to do one of his other comments. And then again, as we're kind of wrapping it up, I'll turn it back over to you, Anthony. Gene says, I do believe the truth is out there, but are we old enough, wise enough, and grown up enough to understand it? And in his opinion, we're not there yet. And I hate to say it, I probably come down with Gene on that one. I'm kind of, not 100% sure if we are. I would like to think we are. I would like to think at a minimum we're redeemable. Even if we've lost our way, I think we could get there. But right in this exact moment in time, and that's why we're having this conversation, it ain't looking so good. And so, Anthony, if you're willing to do it, we'll talk offline, but I think we do part 3, wrap it up. I know you've got a lot of other things to talk about, and then we could address some of those comments and that kind of concern at the very end of the podcast next week. What do you think?
Okay.
Should we just talk offline? Good. Okay. And then last but not least on my side, Blackbeard, what is really in charge? What is really in power? Yeah. So that's a great comment. Everybody take home and think about. Anthony, do you want to address that, or do you want to make any kind of final, 5-minute, different type of statement, and then we'll take it on out?
Oh, with regard to,
Well, you could either address any of those things, or you could just say whatever you want to say. But let's just do about 5 more minutes, and then we'll do the last dad joke, and then we'll call it a night.
yeah, I think that when it comes to this subject, it's very complex, but this subject does come full circle and connect into a whole host of other things. I really hope that we can get to the other subjects that I wanted to touch upon tonight. Hopefully, in the next episode, we can do that. But there is definitely an interconnectivity between the beings, the portals, the occult, and bringing in, CERN and how they do all those things, and the E-files. So it'll be interesting when we can, if we get to the point we have enough time to actually connect all those dots, and you see how they all kind of intertwine and how it's all one grand spectacle here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be it should be a fun discussion when we reconvene, and hopefully we can lay all this stuff out a little bit better. And again, do we know for certain? No, but theoretically, looking at some of these things, it's looking pretty interesting. It's looking pretty interesting. It looks as though the puzzle pieces are starting to fit together, and we're almost at the point where we see a semblance of a picture. So it should be interesting the next episode or whatever we do.
I like where you just ended there. We don't know the answers. However, you just take a step back and you start looking at things, and you start using your brain housing group and start 2 + 2 is 4. Don't listen to the BS that it's not. It is starting to kind of coalesce. And I think, to your point, I think maybe some of the issues that we're seeing in our world right now, to some extent, this conversation is playing a part in it. Something is happening. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's going to be the demise of the dollar. Maybe it's a new technology is about to be out. I'm not sure what's going on, but we all can see it. We can all feel it. Something is happening. People are starting to wake up, and that is a scary thing for people in power, because they're, that goes into, so yeah, if you're willing, Anthony, I will talk offline, but Anthony, I want to do part 3 and let's get you onto that last thing, but I like it. And so even if we'll talk offline, but I like how you want to wrap that up. And I think that would be the perfect way to do it. And then that would be awesome. Yep. All right. Yeah. Hey, as always, I got the one last joke on my side. All right. Hey, everybody. Most people think T-Rex, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a T-Rex. Most people think a T-Rex can't clap because they have those really short arms. The truth is, it's because they're dead. I don't know, man. They're just dad jokes. It's just dad jokes. I like it. No, it's not because they have short arms. They can't clap because they're dead. And that, I'm not joking. That wasn't planned for tonight, but we did that whole fossil record thing and everything. So that
it works.
Yep, that just works. That makes it funny to me. All right. Hey, as always, really appreciate everybody being in here. Now, when you hear, and I say Anthony says, I always have to say that's this guy right here. That's him. He's the one. So, hey, please do comment, like, share, subscribe. Blackbeard's been helping out with the AI write-ups and stuff. And, I guess once you're on the shit list, or anyway, no excuses. Or again, I've got the voice for radio and the face for silent film. So, or no, I've got the voice for silent film and the face for radio. So, I don't know what it is, but it is true. I mean, and that's another part of this grander conversation, disclosure or deception. Well, I mean, no one's talking about, article, or 230. No one's talking about internet censorship. I mean, again, we're just being fed all of these lies and these deceptions, look at over here. That just keeps us preoccupied and busy. And no offense to anybody who's into sports. I used to be big into sports, but sports ball's another one. Like, why would anyone have gone to the Super Bowl? There's not enough of a draw. That's just me speaking, to go and be part of such an abomination, you know, like, and that goes into, I know the reason I just brought that up, because something Anthony had said earlier in the conversation, probably at like the 30-minute mark, we were talking about what we idolize. And I wanted to bring that up. You know, we somehow don't use our own brains. We listen to celebrities, athletes, politicians, people, they don't have any background, you know, in any of this stuff. You know, what's his face? Bill Gates. He's not a doctor. Why are we listening to this clown? Because he's rich, because he has power, because he's influential. That guy doesn't know shit. He doesn't know shit. And he wants the mosquito. He wants to breed mosquitoes with vaccines. So we have no choice. They bite us and you get it. Like, so there's all kinds of stuff, and then CERN and et cetera and et cetera. So I think that's why I just brought that up. These issues right here to me are more important by far than any of the other stuff. But yet as human beings, we still need this. We need this interconnection, this connectivity. We need the release. We need the stress relievers. We need we need something, a passion. You know, I'm into football. Okay, maybe that's your thing. You know, other people are into sanding and painting. You know who you are. Other people are into, you know, nature and hunting and hiking. You know, it's all good. You know, everybody has to have their outlet. But when that outlet is in lieu of conversation, or if it's in lieu of critical thinking, or it's in lieu of open discussion, like true open discussion, then we're in big trouble. So I look forward to next week. We wrap this up with part 3 with Learn Me Something. Learn Me Something. What do you got? What's your outro with your final comments?
I just want to say, you know, God bless you to everybody that's in the chat, everybody that watches the program. You know, it's great being able to hang out with you guys and, you know, listen to your comments, read your comments, and just to be able to share the stage with Mark. Mark is a great guy, and, you know, he's a very giving person, and he really cares about other people, helping them out. And he's just an all-around great guy. And, you know, I couldn't be happier. You know, this is not something, you know, I'm a very private person. I would never want to be on any social media, but when it comes to Mark, I have a soft spot for Mark. So I will most certainly.
It's called alcohol. It's called alcohol, boys and girls.
I will most certainly go on there and help him out any chance I get, because I know he really likes to help out as many people as possible, like the Arizona Trail Vets and a lot of other organizations over the past few years that I've known him. And he's just he's a great human being, and he makes great products.
And that is paid advertising. I'm bribing him with a nice bottle of products
wine. And you know, I wish him the best. I wish you all the best. And I hope you really enjoyed the show. And, you know, feel free to leave comments after the video if there's anything that you would like us to incorporate.
Yes.
Or if you want to follow up with some of these questions that we posed during tonight's discussion. So that being said, you guys all have a wonderful night. God bless you all. And we love you.
And that's a great point. If you do want to see something that you would like to see us specifically bring up next week, please do leave a comment. Not just trolling and finding ways to get people to comment, but it would be nice if people left more comments. Apparently that's how the algorithm works. You know, I don't even know, Anthony, just like on so many of these other things, I don't know if I even believed any of that crap, you know. You know, like, no, I think it just does what it wants to do, and, you know, whatever. But hey, again, echoing what everybody said, God bless everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us tonight. Thanks to everybody in the chat. As always, chatsters, you guys are great. Really appreciate it. Do leave a comment. We'll do this again next week. Well, Anthony and I will talk offline. I'll have to we'll have to bribe him with a bottle of wine to get him on here again next week. But we'll do this again. We'll wrap it up. And then the week after that will be Chappie, because I apologize. I know what happened. Hopefully, I haven't seen anybody in the chat saying my audio is bad. It was my router was dropping from 5 hertz down to 2. I'm pretty damn sure that's what it was. So we'll bring Chappie on, and that works out better anyway, because we'll be closer to his event. And then that'll be the last. So we got 2 more episodes for this season of CLS After Dark. We'll do a giveaway in one of them. I mean, we haven't done that. I guess I kind of really didn't think about that this year. Yeah, we'll do a giveaway next. Yeah, we'll do a giveaway next week. Yeah, matter of fact, Anthony and I will talk offline, and I'll have him come up with a question or a contest, and we'll give something away next week. But thank you again, everybody, for being here. Hats off to Anthony and his wife. His wife's got to put up with him putting up with me. So, hats off to both of those guys. Hats off to all you guys for being here. Really do mean it. Thank you so very much. And you got questions, reach out, leave comments. We're pretty good at getting back on the comments. And I've got a feeling Anthony will be looking at the video to see if there's anything specific for him to answer as well. So we'll see you guys again here next week, 1800 fake time. See, there's just another thing right there. Why do we have fake time? Like, we're all being conditioned. No, it's like it's
a disruptor. It's a stressor. That's why they do it.
That's it. And then, okay. And I just got to end it with this. So I don't know why Gene just said this, but this is a quote from Bender, hookers and blackjack. Thank you, Gene. We got to end it on that right there. Hookers and blackjack and little T-Rex arms. God bless everybody. We'll see you next week. You know the deal. Keep thinking, keep moving, never quit. We'll see you guys again real soon. Getting ready, Gene, and woo!